Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, I go by Korok on these parts of the internet, and I am an American living in the UK. I started my YouTube channel last year as a way to document my through hike of the Appalachian Trail. So if you're interested in that, I have vlogs covering every single day of trail. So go back and watch those if you are interested. Since finishing trail last year, I have returned to the UK, kind of settled back into normal life with work and various things. I'm still continuing to document my weekend adventures, so to speak, so I also have lots of videos covering that. Now that the nice weather is returning back to the UK, spring is here, I feel like I can finally start planning more outdoor adventures here where I live. So that brings me to the topic of today's video, which is that I am embarking on a hike of the West Highland Way. If you are not familiar with the West Highland Way, it is a 96-mile trail that goes up sort of the western side of Scotland. It starts in the town of Mulgai, just outside Glasgow, and it goes all the way up to Fort William, which is a little town village that sits at the base of Ben Nevis, which is the highest mountain in the UK. So I'm going to be attempting this hike on my own, and I'm hoping to be wild camping for the bulk or the entirety of it. If you're not familiar with hiking and backpacking in the UK, Scotland is the only place out of England, Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland, where wild camping is actually legally permissible. So that was one of the big motivations to do the West Highland Way, is to have that kind of freedom in where to camp. So I guess the point of making this video is I just kind of wanted to document my thought processes before I started something like this. It's just something nice, I think, for me to look back on what my expectations were before starting something like this, and then what the experience ended up being. So I think I'm just gonna ramble a little bit, if you let me, and talk about how I've been prepping for this and what I'm expecting my hike to be like. So to be honest with you, I'm kind of having a little bit of trouble structuring what I'm going to talk about, simply because I'm going to freely admit that I haven't really planned this hike at all. I think I only decided that I was actually going to do it like 3 weeks ago, I would say. Basically, the idea came about because my husband Tribute, who hiked the AT with me last year, once he came back to the UK, his friends approached him with the idea of doing the West Highland Way. So he was all on board for it. They had an idea of when they were going to be doing their hike, and for a long time I kind of went back and forth as to whether I would be joining them. And lo and behold, it didn't work out that the dates that they were planning to go on I would be able to do as well, just because of when I could take time off work and other commitments. So I was left with a little bit of a decision as to whether I would just do it on my own, or whether I would take the time to do something else. And I decided, why not? Let's just do it. I'm going to do the West Highland Way by myself. So I will be leaving tomorrow as of when I'm recording this video, and Tribute and his friends are still going to go, but they'll be leaving, I think, 2 or 3 days after I am. So we're going to be hiking completely separately. I'll hopefully, fingers crossed, be finished before they are. So that kind of leads me into the overarching thing that's on my mind for this trip, is simply the fact that I'm going to be doing it alone. And it's not so much a safety aspect of it, although that is, I think, something very important to consider, especially as a young woman, is the safety aspect of doing something alone. So for that, I am carrying my Garmin Messenger, and I'm going to be having GPS tracking on it, all of that stuff. But more than the safety aspect of it, I think this is going to be a new challenge for me simply because I'm not going to be hiking with someone the entire time. So all of my previous backpacking trips, my AT through hike, have been with my husband Tribute. And I think that hiking with a partner lends itself to such a completely different experience, for better or for worse. Tribute and I discussed many times on the AT how our experiences might have differed had we been hiking alone. You know, what kind of decisions would we be making differently in terms of mileage for the day, or when to stop for a break, or I don't know, side adventures to go on. So I did find that hiking with someone else was really beneficial a lot of times, especially when it came to logistical arrangements. Having someone else to be able to kind of split your brain power, and in terms of planning where you were going to be staying, if you needed to call a shuttle, or if any emergencies happened. It was always nice to kind of split the mental load with someone else. So that's really my concern for this trip, is how I'm going to plan everything and decide everything myself. Am I going to push myself a little more, take less breaks? Am I going to take more breaks? I just think it will be really interesting to see how I deal with my experience being 100% up to me and not having to take anybody else into consideration, for better or for worse. All of that being said, though, I kind of do forget that I have a lot of experience solo traveling. I have solo traveled to other countries where I don't know the language. And I really typically thrive on being very organized and planning things out in advance. But I think when it comes to backpacking, I've just taken such a liberal approach to things, and it's the one time in my life where I don't want to do spreadsheets and I don't want to hyperfixate on every single detail of the experience. So for the West Highland Way, I really have no idea what I'm going to be doing day to day. I've bought my train ticket to get to the start point, and I have a train ticket to get back home. And that's about it. I know the town that it starts in, and I know the town that it ends in. But to be honest, I can't name you a single town that is on the route. I did have a rough look at Far Out, because there is a Far Out map for the West Highland Way. So I do have a rough idea of where I might be sleeping the very first night. And other than that, I have absolutely no idea how long it's going to take me. I don't know where I'm going to be sleeping. I don't know where I'm going to be resupplying. And I think in some ways that will be quite liberating. And it will also be a really good teaching opportunity for myself to see how I handle all of these logistical challenges. I do have some pretty big hiking plans coming up in, I would say, the next year or so. So this is a really good learning curve for me for that. I think I really need to throw myself into that challenge and not be afraid of it. But like I said, I do have a lot of experience traveling solo, so I think it's just because I'm so used to specifically backpacking with other people that I just feel a little bit more conscious of what type of decisions might I make differently this time around. The other big thing that's kind of looming in my head is a potential injury that I may or may not have, and that may or may not cause me problems on this hike, so stay tuned for that. Basically, a few weeks ago, we went on a day hike up Hikethroughthis, or Snowdon, which is the highest mountain in Wales. And I have a video on that if you want to watch it. And I felt great for 90% of that hike until the final stretch of coming down the mountain. and all of a sudden I got this explosive pain in my knee. I don't know what the actual medical term for it, I can't remember, but it's basically runner's knee, where the outside of your knee is in a lot of pain. So I had that. I was in agonizing pain finishing that hike, and I was in pain for about the next day and a half. And then it went away, thankfully. But then I think the pain somehow traversed down into my foot, and I started experiencing, I think it's called peroneal tendonitis. So I've been trying to nurse that for the past week and a half, 2 weeks or so. And I think I'm pretty good with it there. But in the back of my mind, I am still a little afraid of, what if my knee flares up again? What if my foot gets worse? How am I gonna manage that? Am I gonna have to bail out early? So that's the big thing in the back of my mind right now. I do have to remind myself that the very first backpacking trip that I went on was on Hadrian's Wall. And with that one, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, and I basically realized that my shoes were too small for what I needed. And I think it was already on day 2 out of 7, I was having just explosive pain in the tendons of my feet. And I walked like that the entire way. And I definitely don't recommend it. And I definitely don't want to have that same experience on this hike. So I have a little bit of more gear in my bag that might potentially help me if the situation gets worse. But I'm hoping that at this point, I have enough knowledge in how to take care of my body, being aware as to how bad an injury really is, or if I can just walk through it, how to manage it, all of that stuff. So yeah, at this point, I'm not super worried about it, but we'll see if I have to call it quits early. I might just park myself on the side of the trail and wait for Tribute and his friends to come past in 2 or 3 days' time, and they can rescue me if that's the worst case scenario. In terms of what I have, if you know me, you know my channel, I don't really like to talk about gear. I don't particularly like to feel like I'm selling people on particular pieces of gear. So I'm not really going to go into that, but just know that everything that I have is basically what I carried on my AT through hike. I haven't made any replacements in terms of my backpack, my tent, my sleep system, anything that's any of the big stuff. So everything that I carried here is what I carried on the AT. The only big difference is that I am not bringing my bear canister this time around because, as you may or may not know, we don't have to worry about bears here in the UK. So I got myself a nice light food bag, which also saves me a lot of space in my bag. So I'm very excited to try that out and see how that goes. Otherwise, yeah, I don't really know what to expect. I have a rough idea of how many days I'd like to complete it in. And of course, I do have my train tickets back, but I have given myself a bit of a buffer in case things go wrong, or I don't know, you never know. But I feel like living in the UK, I am quite familiar with the way things generally operate here. I'm quite comfortable with needing to make logistical arrangements or knowing where to resupply or what's good. So I think being a little bit closer to home gives me a little bit more comfort in, should anything go wrong, I do have options that are familiar to me. So yeah, thanks for sticking with me through this video. I just thought it'd be good to make a little announcement in case people are wondering what I'm up to next. So yeah, I'm leaving tomorrow, and I guess the next time you'll see me is whenever I come back, whether that's early or when I intended to. And I guess you'll catch me in the vlogs then. So see you later. Thanks.